Good morning. Welcome to our May Idaho Federation of Families parent webinar. This month we are focusing on child welfare and what happens when families get involved in that system. So we're really happy to have join us is Amy is a parent. She has come across the state to be present today, so we know it's a big effort on her part, so we really appreciate being here. And Amanda Peña, hopefully I got that right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, she is here from the child welfare, and she is a program specialist. And this is really kind of, I think, an unusual presentation because it took a lot of work to do this. I think a lot of our previous presentations, people can just easily come, discuss their area, kind of a specialty, and a lot of questions get answered. And we really had to be a lot more careful. This is a really sensitive subject. It's a hard subject for a lot of families. There's a lot of information, I think, that will be beneficial for people to understand how the system works, why it works, and things that they can do when they do get involved to kind of make it not quite as challenging and improve the outcome. So I think it's really valuable, and I think it will be really helpful. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda. Amy's going to be asking a lot of questions and making sure that it kind of makes sense from a parent's perspective. So ladies, thank you for your time and the work it was to bring this content to us.
Great, thank you, Carol. So just a note before we begin today that today's presentation is specific to the child welfare program here in Idaho. Every child welfare program across the state is a little bit different, but one thing that we all have in common is that we want to work together with families to ensure the safety of children. Also, just a note, there will be time to take questions at the end of our presentation, so if you have questions, jot those down and we'll give you an opportunity at the end.
These are our objectives, and we hope to achieve today during this webinar. Is that for you? Do you want me to read?
So participants will gain basic knowledge of Idaho child welfare processes and procedures for responding to and assessing reports of child abuse and neglect.
Participants will have the opportunity to learn from a parent's perspective on working with child welfare social workers.
And participants will be provided resources to obtain additional information. So the Child Welfare Program is part of the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare and the Division of Family and Community Services. Keeping children safe is our primary goal. Child welfare services are designed to help protect children while providing supports to strengthen families to prevent abuse and neglect. If a child is not safe in his or her home, child welfare works with a team with law enforcement and the courts to protect the health and safety of each child. So whenever possible, children should remain with their family. So when law enforcement or child welfare receive a report or a referral of abuse or neglect, we determine whether the information reported meets the criteria to be assigned per the Child Protective Act. We respond according to priority guidelines and per the safety assessment standard. We assess the family and their circumstances, and we provide services to reduce safety concerns if needed. If a child does need to be removed from his or her home for safety reasons, we'll work with each family to reduce those safety concerns and return the child home as soon as it's safe to do so. So Idaho is what's known as a mandatory reporting state. This means every adult in Idaho is legally responsible to report suspected child abuse, neglect, or abandonment. Idaho's mandatory reporting law states that, that you should call within 24 hours of observing the child abuse or neglect. However, you should call as soon as possible. Delaying your call could increase the possibility that a child might be hurt. So many organizations and places of employment have protocol for making reports to child welfare. Idaho has a central intake unit, so it's kind of like a call center, and it's located here in Boise, and it's staffed 24/7, 365 with licensed social workers who have received specialized training in order to take those calls. So reports can be made by calling the central intake unit directly, or contacting local law enforcement or the Idaho Care Line. So child welfare receives reports from various sources. That includes family members, law enforcement, the courts, doctors, schools, service providers, and of course community members at large.
I know how difficult it is to find out your family has been reported. You can experience a lot of different emotions and feelings such as anger, betrayal, embarrassment, anxiety, frustration, vulnerability, defensiveness, helplessness, hopelessness, depression, being fearful, and feeling powerless. These are all normal feelings, and it is okay to feel them.
Absolutely. So, when child welfare social workers first contact you, there's some good things to know. First of all, Idaho Child Welfare social workers are licensed social workers. That means they've received at least a bachelor's level college degree and also met the requirements for licensure in the state of Idaho for professional licensure. This isn't the case in all states, so it is pretty special about Idaho that we have that benefit.
That is great.
Second, child welfare social workers are required to inform parents or caregivers the nature of the report. So they'll describe to you what was reported and any other concerns that they might have to address. Mm-hmm. Next, by law, social workers cannot disclose the identity of who made the report. Oftentimes a parent may be able to tell who made the report. However, social workers can't tell you. They can't confirm or deny that. Depending on the type of concerns that were reported to child welfare, the social worker might give you a call beforehand and schedule it to meet with you and your family. Most importantly, Idaho Child Welfare operates underneath what we call the family-centered practice model. So this means our social workers recognize that families are the experts on themselves. Child welfare social workers will approach your family using the 6 principles of partnership. So everyone desires respect, everyone deserves to be heard, everyone has strengths, judgments can wait, partners share power, and partnership is a process. At their core, child welfare social workers really want to help families.
I agree. In our area in the last 2 years, most often we have been contacted by phone prior to a worker coming out to the home. There are times that has not happened, and I still have lingering anxiety when I hear my doorbell ring and I'm not expecting anyone. I have always been welcoming and accommodating. You can arrange a time when a person of support be there with you. This could be a spouse, a friend, or a service provider. It's important for parents to know not to shoot the messenger, so to speak. Social workers are just doing their job. Following up on a referral. Mutual respect goes a long way. It's totally understandable to be upset and to have a lot of emotions when this happens. I know I sure do. But being able to realize it is not the social worker's fault this happened is helpful. Now, granted, the workers can also make a positive or negative impact on how they go about their assessment. So far, everyone that I've worked with at Child Welfare have been respectful and forthcoming.
Yeah, that's so important.
It is.
Mutual respect. Absolutely, Amy. So at the beginning, a child welfare social worker must complete a comprehensive safety assessment. The comprehensive safety assessment is a standardized assessment tool that's used to guide the assessment process and then also document the findings of the assessment. The assessment process begins with information collection. So first, the social worker is going to go back and review the report and look at any other reports that we might have on the family, and decide if any of that information is relevant to what's currently happening. Then the information is going to be gathered through those interviews. So the child welfare social worker will interview the children when it's developmentally appropriate. And they're also required to interview all the children in the family, including any children who may be visiting, so have visitation in the home with the families blended. The social worker may interview the children in the home, the school, a daycare, or even another setting. The social worker will also interview the parents and any other caregivers that reside in the home. It's best for all interviews to be conducted separately so the social worker can have and can receive the best information possible for their assessment. The social worker will also gather information by making observations of the living environment. So social workers really need to gather enough information to have a pretty good understanding of how that family's functioning on a daily basis. They'll want to identify any strengths the family has and also identify if there's any unmet needs that need to be addressed.
For parents who have a developmental, behavioral, or mental health condition, there are some helpful information for parents to have on hand to give to the social worker. I keep current spreadsheets to hand out to our medical, mental, and DD providers, our schools, and CPS. Some of those spreadsheets have everyone's name on it and their date of birth, all of their diagnoses, the medications that they're on, our service providers, and how often we are seeing our providers. I have hard copies, and I also email my spreadsheets to the assigned child welfare social worker. I provide copies of the Children's Comprehensive Diagnostic Assessments, also known as CDAs, psychological reports, and treatment plans. The more information that I have on hand, the easier it is for the social worker to complete their assessment, because they don't have to spend all that time collecting a lot of information that I've already done. I have all of this on hand anyway, and I keep folders and binders and notebooks with this stuff. It takes time and organization, but it's helpful for everyone. It also sends the message that you are on top of things, you know what's going on, you've got it handled, and you're willing to cooperate.
Wow, Amy, that's a lot of work and organization.
It is a lot of work.
Absolutely. Very organized. So additional information is going to be collected after those interviews with the family. So based upon whatever the circumstances are, child welfare social worker is going to ask you for any type of we'll ask you for permission to contact collaterals. So other people with information about your family to help complete that comprehensive safety assessment. So these collaterals may include extended family members, neighbors, doctors or other medical professionals, child or parent service providers, and likely school staff as well. The social worker may also request those medical, school, or treatment reports just to better understand the family's situation. So during the assessment process, the social worker will also consult their supervisor or their team to review the information and just identify if there's any other sources of information that will benefit the comprehensive nature of the assessment.
Mm-hmm. I always give the social worker a list of all of our providers, but they usually ask for one or two people that have the most interaction with our family for making contact. I have chosen different people at different times depending on the situation and the referral that's been made. I pick people who are that have the most information on our family and have spent extensive time in our home, like our son's habilitative intervention worker, our in-home family therapist, and our family support partner, all of whom know the background on all of our children and our family dynamics. I also contact my providers and give them a heads up that a referral has been made and the nature of it. I believe in total transparency with all parties involved because I have nothing to hide.
It must be really interesting contacting those providers and having that conversation.
You know, the first time it was a little challenging, but they've gotten used to it and they really appreciate it, and they're more than willing to talk to whomever. And in fact, there's times where, you know, I tell them right away. I mean, I call them within the day that I find out, and days later they still haven't been contacted, and they will say to me, hey, I haven't heard anything yet. Do you need me to call them? You know, I really want to make sure that they talk with me, and I really appreciate the support that I get from our providers.
Absolutely. And I know from a social worker's perspective, it's a lot easier to call a provider who knows what you're calling to talk about,
right,
than it is to, you know, catch somebody off guard or unexpectedly. So that must be really helpful to have those kinds of conversations.
Yes.
Absolutely. So after the social workers collected all the information they need to complete their assessment, they're going to analyze the information. Mm-hmm. That's what they're experts in doing. And they need to make two decisions based out of that information. So first, they have to decide, did abuse, neglect, or abandonment occur? And we use fancy lingo called the disposition. So how are we going to disposition the report? In Idaho, we have two ways that a report can be dispositioned. Substantiated, meaning that there's enough information to show that abuse, neglect, and abandonment, as defined in law, did occur. Or unsubstantiated, which means there either wasn't enough information to substantiate, or in fact, no abuse, neglect, or abandonment occurred. So the social worker should always discuss the disposition of your report with you, and you will receive written notice regarding whether or not an incident was substantiated or unsubstantiated. If you are substantiated, it's really important that you read those notice letters because there's information about your right to appeal those decisions. And so read them very closely so you don't miss your opportunity to appeal if you are substantiated. The second decision a social worker must make is the safety determination on all the children in the family. So that safety decision is based upon the information collected during the assessment from the interviews, the collaterals, the reports, and then it's applied to a set of standardized criteria. So again, your social worker should be able to explain to you what information they used and how they came to the decision that a child was determined to be safe or unsafe. So it's really important for you to understand that there is an actual process, standardized assessment process for doing that. And that social worker will be able to have that conversation and describe to you what's happening. That safety decision is what determines if we're going to keep a case open for services or not, to address any of those safety concerns in the home. So child welfare, we only provide services to families where a child has been determined to be unsafe. So if a child is determined to be unsafe, that doesn't mean that your child is removed from the home. We actually have another standardized process to help us make that decision as to whether or not we can manage the safety issues for a child while they're in the home, or if removal of that child from the home is necessary.
Once I receive the letter that we have been unsubstantiated and the assessment referral is now closed, I go to the child welfare office with my valid ID and I request my records in writing. I keep a file in my home of all of our child welfare records.
You are so organized.
These are records I wish I didn't have though,
Absolutely.
but I have them.
Yeah, and a note on the public records request, again, you can make these requests straight off the website, or like Amy does, you can go directly into the local office to make those requests. And those requests, again, because child welfare records are confidential, you can request your own records. Portions of it will be blacked out, specific to whatever information it is that you're requesting. So when a child's determined to be unsafe, and I told you we had to have a case open if a child was unsafe, we must provide services to the family to help them address those safety concerns. Services may be a whole barrage of things. You may see substance abuse treatment and services for the parent and or the child, mental health services for the parent or the child, connections with housing, financial assistance, or counseling or other community services. So anything that we've identified, any unmet need that we've identified, we then therefore would need to address with some type of services. So we and child welfare make all efforts possible to maintain that child in the home. However, sometimes the child's safety can only be ensured outside of the home. So it may be that the child is informally placed with a family member or friends, or maybe even in a treatment facility for a period of time. But if that child's safety is unable to be maintained informally, we may then have to look at formal placement through foster care. And even if a child is removed and placed into foster care, it's very likely that the child would be placed with a family or family or a fictive kin, a friend of the family, who could meet the licensing requirements for foster care. And if a child is, again, placed into foster care, we do make all efforts possible to reunify that child with their family as quickly as possible. And if a child's placed into foster care, there are additional court and legal proceedings and things that then happen, different protocols.
We've never had an open case with our family, but we have been on the other side. We were foster parents for 4 years, and during that time we had 24 foster children in our home for varying lengths of time. 5 of those children have become a permanent part of our family, so we do have 8 children. I have met many wonderful foster parents. The goal of child welfare is to reunify children with their families if at all possible. Most children are returned to their families once resources and safety measures have been put in place and parents have shown a pattern of safety and stability. I was thinking about something when you were talking about the different resources. I remember one of the first referrals that were made on our family, the worker identified a resource that we were unaware of called children's mental health. And so we have private insurance, but there were still needs not being met that our private insurance wouldn't cover. And so they introduced us to children's mental health, and we were able to get additional mental health services for our kiddos that have greatly benefited our family. So
that is just warms my heart to hear that services were beneficial for your family of 8 and 24 foster children over time. That's pretty remarkable. Definitely remarkable.
Well, and being a foster parent, I mean, as a foster parent, you receive continuing education and you have that support of the community, and everyone that I have come in contact with really does want the best for all children involved. And, the goal truly is for the family to be reunified. And they tell you in your foster care training, they call it pride training, that if you don't think that you can be on board with that being the main goal, then you have no business being a foster parent, because most often it's in the best interest of the children to be able to stay with their family or next of kin until that family gets the resources that they need.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, Amy. We partner very closely with our foster parents who, our foster parents aren't just there to care for the children. I mean, yes, that is excellent, but they really are to help us work reunification with the family, mentor birth parents if possible, and really be able to demonstrate for our families how things can look when and keep those children safe.
Healthy interactions, and definitely.
Absolutely, and we value our foster parents so greatly. So we thank you for your time as a foster parent as well.
You're welcome.
So Amy asked me to give you some numbers in this presentation. So during the state fiscal year 2017, there were 22,125 total reports called into child welfare, so into our centralized intake unit. Of those reports, 8,998 were assigned to a social worker for safety assessment. That's how many we responded to. Approximately 11,000 children were included in at least one of those assessments. And and of those 11,000 children assessed, 1,337 were placed into foster care at some point for some duration. On average, 70% of children in foster care are successfully reunified with their parents. And then on average, about 15% of all those assessments we complete are found and determined to be substantiated, so disposition is substantiated.
I think it's important for parents to know these statistics, because it is so frightening when you get that phone call. And even for me, I mean, we've been doing this a long time now, and it still brings up a lot of emotion for me. But realizing, well, one, obviously, we're doing the things that we need to keep our family safe, but to share these statistics with other families that are struggling. And it just goes to show you that the department really is, they only take out children when necessary, and the goal is to return them. So I think these statistics are actually comforting, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something to clarify, too, that you just reminded me of is that in Idaho, child welfare social workers cannot remove a child from the home. So it's law enforcement that has the ability to remove children from the home, or a child can be removed from the home via a court order. And so we do have those additional legal steps in order to remove a child from the home. But you are correct. Numbers do give us some perspective, and at the same time, we really do value what these numbers represent. These are social worker interactions and work. These are families. These are children. These are our individuals' lives. But and so we do recognize and know that there's a story behind every single one of these numbers.
Definitely. You can find more information about the Idaho Child Welfare Program on the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare's website. Additional information regarding support and resources for families can be found on the Federation of Families and Idaho Parents Unlimited website. I would also put a plug in. If you are a family that's struggling with mental health, you can always reach out to the Parent Network. I'm a member of the Parent Network, and we advocate for children's mental health. And there are a lot of exciting changes going on in the state of Idaho and ways to access services for your children. The YES Project, so I would definitely reach out to the department and find out more information how you can get the resources that your family needs to be successful.
Absolutely. Great information, Amy. You can also find on our website, as noted, our child welfare standards. There's a whole link to those. So if you have any questions about the practices or policies that of how child welfare is operating, you can find our standards and all of our policies on our Department of Health and Welfare website as well. So we're really excited to be able to provide you with those resources. So at this point in time, I'm going to check in with Carol and see what our situation is in regards to questions. We can continue a conversation, absolutely. So, Amy, are there any other questions or thoughts or ideas, that things you wanted to share that we maybe didn't cover in the presentation that you can think of from a parent's perspective would be good to know?
I think it was a really thorough presentation. I think we covered a lot of information. I can tell you from my personal experience on both sides of the fence. So, as a foster parent, I worked closely with our caseworkers, and they were all very compassionate and respectful and wanted the best for the kiddos. They tried really hard to work with the parents to give them the resources that they needed and give them the support that they needed to get their kiddos back. And I really appreciated the relationships that I had with my caseworkers. They become a part of your family, kind of, during that time. And, like I said, we've added 5 children to our family because of foster care. And I still have a good relationship with one of our main caseworkers. And she, checks in with us to see how we're doing, and vice versa. And, she didn't just, oh, my job is done and there you go. And so she's been a good support. And I would say, as far as families who do get referred, just something that's been helpful for me is to find out that I'm not alone. This is something that happens commonly with families that deal with mental illness. A lot of people don't understand it. And like I said, you get frustrated, you're embarrassed, you get angry, and all those feelings. But know that you're not the only family that this happens to. And as I've gotten involved with the Parent Network and reached out to other families in support settings, we share a common experience. And so I think it's important to know that if you're struggling, contact the Federation, contact the Parent Network, try to find resources in our state to meet with other families that are going through similar situations so you can get the support that you need.
Absolutely. What I heard there was, ask for help. You're not alone. And that right there is advice that's golden right there. Yeah. And so I think that is really important. Are there any other questions that you interact with parents all the time in regards to this? So are there any other frequently asked questions or pieces that myths that we may be able to bust?
Myths. That's a good question. I think you covered a lot of it. I think, people just kind of want to know what the process is and the resources that you provide, going to the website to find out, what are your rights as a family? What is the process? What are those guidelines that they have to follow? And, like you said, that it is a court process. If you are substantiated, there are several court dates. And one wonderful resource that I found out recently is that they do give an information sheet now to families that go through this process, so they know what those court dates are, so they can keep, open communication with their caseworkers so they're not cut off guard. Again, the department isn't trying to break up families and take your children out of the home. They're doing the best they can to ensure the safety of the children and to get them home as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So they're not going to pull a fast one on you.
We try to know.
And so, and I know that we're working towards giving that same information to families, you know, when they do get that referral and just going through that assessment. There's so much, especially if you're not familiar with the way that the department works, you don't know what to expect. And so feel free to ask your safety assessor that comes into your home, okay, what can I expect? You know, what should I know? And so far, I mean, we've worked with several people in the department, and we've had all good interactions.
Absolutely. So just to provide some clarification, so if your child is placed into foster care, then there would be additional court date. So
Correct.
Just the substantiation would just be, there doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean that your child would be placed into foster care. But you are correct. We do have these excellent family information packets for when a child is placed into foster care to be able to hand to parents so that, you know, most oftentimes in that moment of crisis, if a child's been removed from the home, you may be given information and have
And
a
you don't take it
conversation,
in.
and it just all goes.
No, it goes over your
Yeah.
head.
So to be able to leave those additional documents that we created with parent information. With parents' input, that parent then is able to, you know, see the written down information and have a little bit more guide. But one of the things Amy also mentioned that I'd really like to point out is, yes, contact your social worker. The other thing that many parents don't know or feel awkward about is contacting your social worker supervisor is completely okay. You know, our social workers have multiple families that they're serving at one time, and they may not be available at every moment that you may need them. So we do strongly encourage families that we're working with to contact a supervisor if they're unable to reach their worker, and have conversations so that their needs can be met.
Definitely. And when you're contacting them, if this is something that we've done, when we've had a really good interaction with the caseworker and we feel like they've gone over and beyond for our family, we'll contact the supervisor to let them know that they're doing a good job. Because, and I know that sounds really weird, because I know that this perspective is unique because we were foster parents first. I get that people who get referrals have never worked on the other end are probably not going to interact with the department the same way that we do. I understand that. But I've seen it on the other end, and I see how overworked they are and what a big caseload that they have. And when someone gives you the, you know, attention that you guys need and close your case so quickly, you're really appreciative of it. And it's good to give that positive feedback, because so often they're looked at as the bad guys. And I mean, they really are doing the best that they can. At least the people that we've interacted with over the years throughout the state.
Yeah. And our social workers understand, just by their presence, the impact of a traumatic impact that we can have on families. So our workers are trained and do take steps as necessary to help mitigate those trauma reactions. I know Amy talked about the doorbell and not expecting somebody. We understand, you know, the impact that we have on families, and we do provide training and practice and skills building to help mitigate that whenever possible. So, but to hear information like Amy calling and providing positive information on a social worker, that's like gold for our social workers, and that's what they really do come to work for, those great positive interactions that we have with families and children every day.
Something I would also add, you know, if for some reason your children do get removed from your home and they are placed in foster care, you know, I know we hear a lot about the only things that hit the news are the horror stories, but there's so many good foster families out there. And part of our training is, you know, we are taught not to speak negatively about the families, to keep positive as much as we can, to involve those children in our home as if they were our own, but yet keep those boundaries, you know, and it can be difficult. I mean, when we've had children leave our home, and they go back to the families, or they go to a different family member, I mean, it's a bittersweet. You're grateful that you had the opportunity to be involved, that the kiddo gets to go home, but it's like losing one of your own. And so there's a lot of emotions involved. But if there are people out there that want to get involved, I'd put a plug in to become a foster parent as well.
Thanks, Amy.
There's a great need for it because there's so many kiddos out there. And even if you don't think that you are cut out to do it, at least find out more about it. And it's step by step. And it may not be the right thing for you, and it may be what your family needs. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity we had.
And if you are interested in the foster parenting, you can call the Idaho Care Line, so 211, and
I was
gather
thinking it was still that number, but I didn't know for sure.
It is. And you can also go to the website and the Department of Health and Welfare website and use the foster care links to get to more information about providing foster care as well. And Amy is correct. We're always looking for foster parents, and we again greatly appreciate the ones. We have some amazing families out there doing great work.
And even if you just want to do respite care, I know in years past you could just become get training to be a respite provider, which means that you're allowing foster families a break from the kiddos, and you just take them as needed. So it doesn't even have to be a full-time job, and you can decide how many children you want. If you only feel like you can handle one, then you can only have one. Don't think they're going to dump a sibling group of 6, even if they try.
Absolutely. And even if you're unable to provide foster care, there are multiple ways that you can provide any type of support to foster children who are in foster care or are newly reunified with their families as well. So lots of opportunities. How are we doing, Carol?
You're doing great.
Excellent. Do you have any other frequently asked questions that we may have missed?
That's a good one. I guess the experience I have seen so often with parents that we're working with is that it's terrifying.
Definitely.
Because it definitely is a system that parents are very
afraid of.
It's scary to go into. And I think particularly what Amy and what you both are saying is that the more information you have about understanding what the steps are, what comes next, how it works, the better the outcomes are. And for it not to be as adversarial. And I think for a lot of parents, their response is to be super defensive. Because it's one, it has to do with something that they believe that they're being told they're doing wrong, and the threat of having children removed from the home, so they quickly go into that defensive pose. So the idea that I think you're probably very unique, but I would love to think that as you provide this information, it might change and shift the way that some parents do it, as far as here's everything I have. Here's the notebooks, the documents, the providers, the everything that you would want. To help support kind of what we're saying and what's happening. And as we all know, I mean, kids with really complex mental health needs present differently. And there are things that happen and things that are misunderstood, be it in the community, in the schools. So it's dicey when the department has to come in and be able to sort through what's really happening, how do we support the family, how do we make sure the child is safe.
Right, and it's through, really that comprehensive nature of our assessment, where we can only assess the information we have. And so if we're in the position where we don't have a lot of information, we then have to make decisions based upon that limited amount of information. So the more information we're able to assess, the better we're able to work with the parents and the service providers and really have an understanding of what's happening, the better quality of assessment we're going to be able to provide. And it could be the results of the assessment is excellent, everything's in place, and we're closing an assessment, as Amy has said. And alternately, it may be that we may need to be providing some supports there, and it's okay, again, it's okay to ask for help and need help. Child welfare does have knowledge of many resources, and sometimes it is maybe we need to provide a little support for a little while and ensure that the family and the child's needs are being met. So again, there is not a goal. If you listen to our statistics, we assessed over 11,000 children. However, only about 1,300 of those children actually experienced a removal from their home. And so...
and 70% were returned.
Correct. And 70% of those 1,300 are successfully reunified. So again, just making sure that we're sharing information, doing it with mutual respect, and that improves the quality of our assessment and our ability to provide supports if needed, or just be able to ensure that we are ensuring the safety of the child in the home.
Well, I think also this is the intersection, because again, if we're talking specifically to families who have kids with complex mental health needs, is the whole YES project.
Yes.
So as they are developing the super intensive community-based services, and you all are coming into contact with families with kids with complex needs, there'll be more services in the community, and sometimes it's just making those connections. There's limited information that parents have, and the idea often is that they just need someone who can connect them to the right type of service, with the idea of also, what I love about YES, it's not just about the child, it's about the whole family. So is how are they going to support the family, how are they going to make sure the parents have some of the education and the tools that they need, and so these different systems are coming together to kind of support each other's mission.
Absolutely. And Carol, I appreciate you bringing up the services. Child welfare, we're constantly looking at the array of services that are available to families. And I think we can all say in Idaho, we know that there are locations of the state where mental health and behavioral health services are challenged. And so by working together and sharing all this communication and assessment information, we can start to better identify what areas may not have services and what services are needed. And so that we can work together across programs to ensure that those services are available to the families who need them.
Yeah. So I would say for those that are listening is that, the Idaho Federation of Families is a resource in terms of if you're having a problem, if you need help, and if you also have stories to tell, because we are collaboratively working with Child Welfare, with Idaho Parents Unlimited, to bring parent stories to the table to have a discussion about what worked or what didn't work, what new ideas, and kind of help to just, to inform them of what it's like specifically to the population, again, with kids with mental illness. So feel free to contact us. Also, again, Amy talked about the parent network. If you are looking for a group of parents that can support you, and often what they will do is connect you to a parent who has had a similar experience, definitely give the network a call. I don't know, we have the information up on the screen, so I would say call the Federation, and I can connect you to the parent that's in the area of the state that you live in, and they can then take your information and find out who is the best parent to work with you. A phenomenal resource, again, because it's parents helping parents, a shared lived experience, and a lot of ideas of how to move forward. And again, in really positive ways. It's
definitely. I mean, that's been something that has been life-changing for me, just being involved in the last 9 months, knowing that a parent's voice actually does matter and can make a difference right now. And that's why I decided to get involved, because even though I'm a busy mom, we've got a lot of appointments, but the system can't get better without the input from the parents, and they are listening to the parents, and they are making changes based upon what we are giving them. And so it's so important to speak up and to speak out so we can better the system for everybody involved. And there's a great collaborative work going on with, like you said, the Department of Health and Welfare and the justice system and the education. I mean, there's so many systems coming together to make this the most ideal place to get services.
Yeah,
and
new system of care.
I'm really excited, and I'm hopeful for the first time.
And I'd say from Child Welfare too, we greatly value our parents' feedback. It's challenging for us to get parent feedback because of the feelings around child welfare. People may have some feelings of shame or other things. They don't want to share their stories or provide feedback, and so it's really challenging for us, especially from an ethical perspective, to ask our parents to share their stories, because we don't want to be in the position of exploiting them or doing those things.
Breaking that confidentiality.
But we greatly appreciate it and need it, and we're really looking forward to those additional future opportunities. We're very thankful to the Federation and to the Parent Network and iPool for being able to bring those parents together and allow us to have conversations, because again, there are some challenges with our program trying to do that, and we've always kind of had a barrier in place for that. There is a place for parent voice within child welfare, and we're really looking forward to those opportunities to continue all those conversations with parents on how we can help to improve our practice and policies.
That's great. Yeah. So ladies, thank you very much. We appreciate your being here. We have one more webinar coming towards the end of May, May 29th, I believe, probably at 10 o'clock in the morning. And this one is going to be with the YES Project, specifically looking at the CANS, the Child Adolescent Strengths and Needs Assessment that is going on right now that families are using to be able to access the YES services. So we'll be pushing out information in the next couple of days for that, so please join us again. And thanks. I mean, it was a big commitment on both your part to create the training and to come to town to do it. And again, I think I failed to mention that Amy's actually part of that collaborative group with Child Welfare and IPL and the Federation. So
Yes, I'm excited to be involved.
Yep, she has jumped in. A mom that was like over her head, and she's just found a little more space to get involved. So we love it. And we'll see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.